So what's influence and how do you measure it? Let's take a look inside the video. Hey, it's Gia from Brand24, and today I want to talk about influence. What is it and can you really measure it? So first of all, how do we define influence? Well, according to Webster's dictionary, influence is the power or capacity of causing an effect in indirect or intangible ways. In terms of social media, when people talk about influence and influencers, they are referring to profiles that have the ability to sway people's opinions and make them pay attention, whether they're talking about a product or brand, recent events, or even just their thoughts on a topic. And because people tend to listen when they speak, this means that just hearing an influencer say something or seeing them use something from a particular brand, well, this can definitely affect the purchase decisions of all their followers and more. Which brings us to a very important question. How do you measure influence? Well, hypothetically speaking, you could run surveys on why people chose this brand instead of that one, and people do that a lot. But the truth is, whenever the question starts with why, you can't always trust the answer that people give you, because if we're being totally honest here, half the time we ourselves are not fully aware of the reasons why we do the things we do or why we choose the brands we choose, at least not consciously. The choices we make are often the result of seeing and just hearing certain messages over and over again, especially when they come from people that we trust and look up to. We're always influenced by something. I like to think, I've come to think of it as the power of suggestion, blanketed in really heavy branding and brand awareness. And while I wouldn't say that having a high level of brand awareness is equivalent to being influential, it's certainly a part of it. So one way to measure brand awareness is by seeing how much buzz you generate or how often people talk about you. For example, when we were using Brand24 to track mentions of prominent names in the digital marketing industry for our report, that's the top 100 digital marketers of 2019, we saw that in just 1 year, all of 2018, Gary Vaynerchuk's name was mentioned a total of, get ready, 712,382 times. That comes out to just shy of 2,000 times daily that his name came up in public online conversations across the internet. So people had been talking about him on social media, in forums and blogs, as well as on a bunch of other different sites across the web. Clearly, he has amazing levels of brand awareness, and more importantly, when he talks, people listen. Actually, even when he doesn't talk and someone just mentions his name, people listen. That's why all those 7,000 plus mentions that we found got more than 11.5 million interactions. This averages out to approximately 16 likes, shares, and comments for each individual mention of his name. That's not even coming directly from him. Of course, it goes without saying that the same applies to his social media reach. So whether it's the social media reach of content that he created himself or just content that mentions his name, the numbers are correspondingly high. In this case, the social media reach of mentions that were just talking about him came to 897,771,091 in just 1 year. Even content that just mentions his name draws a crowd. So it's really not surprising that he's often referred to as an industry influencer. And this is why metrics like your number of mentions, interactions, and social media reach are pretty significant, even if some people refer to these as vanity metrics, and in a way they're right. At first glance, these are factors that don't really appear to measure much more than popularity, but that doesn't mean they're not without their merits. So we can see from the data I mentioned that when it comes to influence, it's all connected. Influence isn't one independent variable on its own. It's made up of a bunch of interconnected factors that you have to take into consideration together. And this definitely includes brand awareness, how often people talk about you, and the way that different audiences engage with this information. It's a mixed bag. But don't take my word for it, just look into the data yourself. Check out the latest report on the top 100 digital marketers of 2019 to find relevant data and stats on some of the most prominent names in the digital marketing industry. And then think about what these numbers say to you. So that is it for this week. I hope I made you think about the topic of influence a little bit and reconsider the things that you let influence your decisions. Actually, why don't you go ahead and put that down in the comment section below. What do you think has the biggest influence on you and the decisions you make? For me, it is quickly becoming personal recommendations and user reviews. I've just made one too many cheap purchases that actually ended up costing me a lot in the long run because, well, the products, they just didn't work out. So I really should have listened to what people were saying. Anyway, I would love to hear from you and see if you and I are influenced by similar things. So just go ahead and put it in the comment section below. All right, so our time is really up now, but if you found this video helpful or at least somewhat thought-provoking, feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where I will be showing you how to do even more in social media and digital marketing each week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.